Hi, welcome back to Dr. Vasu's lectures. In continuation of C language, let us see the files used in C. There are different types of files being used in C language, and let us see what are they and how they are useful. In the execution, let us see how a C program is being executed. We take a source file, that is the program we have written. It is in English-like sentences, and we'll be saving that file with an extension .c. .c extension. That file is being saved. Whatever the name you give, it comes in the front. Next. So this file is being given to the compiler. The compiler takes the source file, that is the .c file, and it converts it into an object file. That object file is in the form of with the extension .obj. That compiler creates a file that is .obj file. Okay, and this file is being given to a linker. Here, one important task is being executed, is done by the compiler, the system here. We have seen in the previous modules, we have seen different header files are being included in our program. So while writing the program itself, in the beginning, we have included some header files. These header files contain some functions, right? So here the linker checks these library functions which we have included. There may be many number of header files, but here that whatever the header file we have included, that functions can be used related to that particular function header file. We are free to use those functions. So here this linker, after checking these header files, it creates one executable file .exe. It is an executable file, and this is given to the loader. So this file is being executed, and here we get the output. The system takes this exe file, and this execution of this file gives you the required output. That's how it creates these files, and the library functions which we have discussed earlier in the previous modules are being used like this. So suppose if these functions are missing, then those functions, the header files are missing. Related to that particular header file, we cannot use those functions. So here at different stages, we get alerts, like if at all any errors are there, we get, and finally we get our file executed and get the output. So here is the friends, like, share and comment, and please subscribe to Dr. Vasu's lectures and get more videos. I will see all your comments and will respond to them. Please do share, comment and subscribe. Thank you. So in continuation of this, first one, source code. Source code in the sense the program we are writing. It is saved with an extension .c. Example test.c. Whatever the name you give this test or program.c, something like it. Whatever the name related to, the naming should be clear. And even after some time, if you check your program, we should be able to recollect what would have been there in the program, right? So that's how we have to name this program. So here it is test.c. Next, header files. Already we have discussed these header files contain different functions. So to reuse these functions are the macros in several programs, right? So save that file as a .h file, and suppose if we want to already system files are there, Those are called built-in functions, built-in header files. So we can use them directly, or if you want to create a header file, we can save that file as a .h file and we can use it later. Okay, next, object file. This object file, after our source file is given to the compiler, it creates the object file. It comes as a .obj file with extension obj. So compiler generates this file. Object code files are not executed by the system. If you are compiling in the installation of our C compiler, we have seen two things. One is compiling, second is running. Running in the sense execution of the program. At the compile, suppose if you compile, only you are creating this obj file, object file, not the executable file. So here the compiler just generates the object file, but it cannot be executed. Okay. So next, executable file. The linker generates the exe file. Already, as you have seen in the previous flow chart, we have that linker checks the header files and it generates the .exe file, this extension exe. So it accepts object code program which has come from the compiler, that obj file as input, and it compiles, right? This object code instructions along with the predefined object code. Okay. Linker links the object code with the corresponding libraries. Here, the checking is done whether we have incorporated. Suppose I am using some function, some built-in function. Whether I have included the corresponding file, header file or not, is checked by the linker here. So the linker checks whether you can use that particular function or not. That means to use a particular function, we need to incorporate or include that header file. So these library functions already contain the object code, that is binary files. So it generates the executable file, that is .exe file. The .exe file is generated when you run that particular program. So that's how, when you run this .exe file, your program is executed and gives you the results. Whatever the output you want, you have written, that output you will be getting. Coming to these library files, they come in different varieties. Already we have discussed in previous modules. If not, just please refer the previous modules. The examples: stdio.h, sconio.h, string.h, math.h, all these are different library files. Next, compiling and execution of a program. So here what happens is, already we have discussed all this. Write the code, that is the source file, source program, compile it, right? If you have any errors, these errors generally will be syntax errors, syntax type errors. Suppose I am writing, while writing, I didn't put proper brackets or semicolon, or in writing I did some mistake in spell checking properly. Instead of writing printf, just I stopped print, or print ft, something like. So whatever the syntax errors are committed in the program are identified by this compiler at the time of compilation. So compile time errors, this we may call it as. Next, so it checks the errors. Linking. So the linking is done here. Next. So it again checks the errors. Means whether you have incorporated the proper header file to use a particular function. This linker checks that. If you have included the required header file and you are using a particular function or whatever the functions you are using, then it gives out the executable file. In this execution time, we get the runtime errors. Runtime errors are different compared to the compile time errors. Here in the compile time errors, simple syntax, whether you have written properly or not, whether you have followed the format or not, all these are being checked. But at the time of runtime, it checks whether, suppose I try to add 3 plus a letter L, right? A variable, two variables, A and B. A is a number and B is a letter or some character or something else. Then it cannot do that. It cannot execute. It cannot do the multiplication or addition or whatever calculations you want. So this sort of errors crop up at the time of runtime. So they are called runtime errors. So that's how the program is executed. Next, coming to the C library, in detail, let us see functions in the form of libraries. Whatever the functions we want to use, they come in the form of libraries. And this library is a collection of header files, right? So we have discussed this, and these libraries are .h files with the header file. We call it as the header files. They come with the .h files. They are built-in files or user-defined. We also can write a header file, right, for later purposes. Here, some of the libraries, built-in libraries, let us see. stdio.h, standard input-output, right? And string.h is another one. Console input-output, conio.h, and console input-output, and math.h, right? Here in stdio.h, we can use, once you incorporate or include stdio.h file, you can use printf, scanf functions. Similarly, when you incorporate string h, right, string length, str length, string cat, str rev, all these functions can be used. With the conio h, clear screen, get char, right? You get ch, clear scr, clr scr, clear screen, get character, right? Similarly, for math h file, it comes absolute, random, power, square root, all these functions come. So here, these are the library files, built-in files, right? We have to, depending on the requirement, our requirement, suppose I want to calculate absolute value, you have to incorporate or include math h file, right? Next, IDE. IDE means integrated development environment. In the installation of our C program, we have seen that. If not, please go through that module of installation of C, and there we get an environment to write a program, right? To write a program, compile it, and execute. So to write any program, we need some certain environment. That environment we call it as IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. So here it is a standard IDE, has a blue screen. You can observe that. General console comes in a black screen, right? But here the standard IDE comes with a blue screen. So to save functions, you can go to the menu there directly, and you can do that. Or if you want to, after writing the program, you can save it using F2, right? Compile, Alt F9, right? Run Control F9, like this you will be using. So here, coming to this IDE, I have used Turbo C++ as a IDE environment. We have seen the installation of this. There are some other IDEs are available, these C compilers. You can also go use code blocks, Dev C++, Eclipse, Visual Studio Code, etc. So this is so once you are ready with all this, now we can write a program and get our work done. Okay. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Let us meet in the next module.